What are the main human rights protected during armed conflict? In the wake of ongoing conflicts around the world, the protection of human rights during armed conflict has never been more pressing. Recent events have sparked conversations about how international humanitarian law is applied. Many are searching for answers on what rights are safeguarded during these turbulent times. International humanitarian law, including the Geneva Conventions and the laws of armed conflict, sets clear standards for protecting human rights during war. These rules aim to limit the effects of armed conflict and safeguard those not participating in hostilities. The right to life is a central protection. International law prohibits the intentional killing of civilians and those not engaged in fighting. Killing is only allowed in lawful acts of war, targeting legitimate military objectives. The prohibition of torture and other forms of ill treatment is absolute. No one, including prisoners of war or civilians, may be subjected to torture or cruel treatment under any circumstances. The right to be free from slavery and forced labor is also protected. International law forbids slavery and forced labor in all situations, including during armed conflict. The principle of distinction requires parties to a conflict to differentiate between combatants and civilians. Attacks must be directed only at military objectives, not at civilians or civilian property. The principle of proportionality means that any harm to civilians or civilian property must not be excessive compared to the military advantage expected from an attack. The principle of humanity requires that parties avoid causing excessive harm or suffering to both combatants and civilians alike. The right to fair treatment and due process applies to prisoners of war and detained civilians. They must be treated humanely and given access to legal representation. Medical personnel, facilities, and humanitarian workers are guaranteed protection. These groups must be allowed to carry out their duties without being targeted or hindered. Certain fundamental rights, such as the right to food, water, and medical care, are maintained for civilians and other protected persons. Special protections exist for vulnerable groups, including children, women, and persons with disabilities, who are at greater risk during armed conflict. These protections are binding obligations under international law, and violations can lead to legal consequences for individuals and states. The goal is to limit suffering and preserve human dignity even in the midst of war.